and welcome to The Content Bite, a podcast for freelancers who use their words to make money. I'm Rachel Smith, a freelance journalist, copywriter, and content producer. I'm also the founder of Rachel's List, a jobs board and community for Australian writers and other creatives.
And I'm Lynn Testoni. I'm a journalist and a content writer as well. Rachel and I are your weekly co-hosts, and every week we're bringing you all kinds of tips, tricks, and some fabulous guests to help you make the most of your freelance business. This podcast is sponsored by our good friends at Rounded, easy accounting and invoicing software made just for Australian freelancers and sole traders. It's everything you need to make freelancing easier. Find out more at rounded.com.au.
Also, if you're a gold member of Rachel's List, Rounded is giving you 20% off an annual subscription plan. Upgrade to gold membership for all the details. Hi, Lynn. Hi, everybody who's out there listening.
Hi, Rach. Oh, wow. We're in
Back
November. Do you get the sense that this year is just speeding up and we're all just chasing our tails? Because I certainly do.
Yes. There's just so much to do, isn't there, this time of year before you have a break. I'm really not a fan of this time of year because I think every editor and client wants to squeeze something in before Christmas, and you're stuck in that position of going, oh my God, I'm just going to be stressed and freaking out until whenever you take that break. For me, it's hopefully going to be the 16th. But I've just booked a resort break in January. I'm going to be the vacation care this holidays instead of somebody else. So I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, that's a nice idea. Yes. I command you not to do any work.
Okay, I'll try. Aye, Captain.
Okay, yeah. Okay, we have a lovely guest on today, and this episode is actually a bit of a follow-up to our recent chat with Joanna Leggett. He sang the praises of leading freelance life to go back to the 9 to 5. And I love that episode. It's done really well for us. And it's so useful for many people who might be on the fence, but really wanting a year or two of solid income right now.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a lot of that I'm hearing from freelancers at Rachel's List. So I'm really looking forward to talking to our guest today. She is a career and interview coach, Leah Lambart, and she's going to talk to us about how you can navigate the job search and recruitment process if you're thinking of, what Joe Leggett did, going back into that perm job. I'm just going to read a quick bio for Leah. Leah is a career and interview coach, founder of Melbourne-based career coaching business Relaunch Me, and host of the Relaunch Your Career podcast, and Seek's resident career coach. Wow. Leah and her team support a range of clients, including recent school leavers, university students, career changers, return to work parents, and individuals who've been made redundant to identify their best fit career and then support them through their job search journey. Amazing.
Welcome, Leah. So great to have you join us.
Thank you for having me, ladies.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Leah. What do you do and who do you help?
Yeah, well, look, as Rachel mentioned, I'm a career and interview coach. I've been running my own business, Relaunch Me, for over 8 years now. My first career, like many career coaches, I didn't start as a career coach. My first career was actually as a tax accountant.
Wow.
And then I moved into recruitment and recruited accountants, and then HR, and then project management. And then I had 3 children in 4 years. And it was at that point where I needed to do a lot of reflection and think, well, what do I actually really want to do? And it was really recruitment that I always loved, but I loved helping the candidate as opposed to help, the sales side of recruitment. And so that's when I came across career counselling, went back to study at RMIT, and really started my business initially to help women get back to work, hence the name Relaunch Me. But it's sort of evolved over the years to realising that it's not just women and parents, but a lot of people need relaunching. Small business owners who want to go and work for someone else. I have men in their 60s who want to relaunch. And then we've got young people who need to launch rather than relaunch. And so the business has evolved a lot, and we've got a team of people, providing support with choosing a career, but then all the job search process that goes behind that.
Wow. It sounds like you really fell into the right niche for you after that kind of winding career journey yourself.
It did take a while, but and I think that's what really drives me to do this work, is to try and help people find an easier journey. I don't regret the things that I did in my time, but I think if I'd had some career guidance at school or as a young person, I definitely would have landed on something that suited me earlier.
That is so true. And that's something that our podcast is very much centered around, is trying to help people find out stuff at the start so they don't waste a lot of years or waste a lot of time, trying to work out those things for themselves. So it's really, I think career coaches are brilliant, and there should be more of them. But that episode I mentioned before, your bio with Joanna Leggett, is actually a really great intro episode to yours, because she was a very successful freelancer who, correct me if I'm wrong, Lynn, she hit a bit of burnout, didn't she? And wanted,
she did.
She just wanted a new challenge, and she wanted to let go of, having to hustle and having to deal with cash flow and all of that, and just focus on the one job at hand. Do you find that freelancers are coming to you and saying that very thing? I just want to let go of all of that and just do one job?
Yes, I do. And it's funny, I actually worked with Jo a couple of times.
Oh, wow.
So she contacted me a couple of times to contribute to career articles. So I really enjoyed that episode. I found it really interesting. But yes, definitely not just writers, but business owners, interior designers, people who have been running their own business, whether it's an online business, and they're really just tired of the hustle, tired of putting out proposals and quotes. And, for some people that takes a lot of time. And then there's, no one responds to the proposal, or they say, look, we're thinking about it, and then they never get back to them. So there's a lot of work that is, they're not ever paid for. So I think also a lot of parents who are freelancers, they just want to leave work at work. They don't want to have to think about weekends or evenings writing a blog post for their website or what they should be posting on Instagram. And so I think that's sort of often the people that are coming to see us. They just want a stable job, secure income, and not having to worry about all the other things that you need to do as a freelancer. Even if that's just like a stopgap for a couple of years, like there isn't this sense of you have to do that forever and you can't go back. But it might be that you just need a bit of a break. And often it depends on what else is happening in their life. For example, their partner might be going through a career change, so they need that stability. So I think it's a lifestyle decision, also a personality decision. Some people are just not cut out for the highs and lows of being a freelancer.
Yeah.
So true.
Do you think it's hard for freelancers to adjust or go back to permanent work, especially if they've carved out quite a successful business and niche? What would employers think about you making the shift? Yeah, that's a good question. I definitely think in the past it has been harder for small business people or freelancers to go back to the workforce, because I guess they're seen a little bit as a flight risk. Yeah. If you have worked for yourself for such a long time, you haven't had to answer to anyone. You might still be taking instructions from clients, but you can do work in your own time. You don't have to answer to people. So for some employers, that is definitely a bit of a risk, that you won't enjoy that or you won't fit in, and that you're going to leave after they've trained you and spent money hiring you. So how can you navigate that question if it comes up in an interview? I think it's about how you present yourself on paper and at the interview, and really being able to articulate all the great skills that you develop as a freelancer in terms of, business development and networking and having to manage your own time. Like, there's so many great transferable skills. So it's about being able to identify those skills, that it's not just your writing, for example, it's all the other things that you do to make your business successful, and then being able to get that across. And would it also be perhaps talking on more of a personal level of, my lifestyle has changed, or my life has changed, or I'm in this stage now with needing a more stable work, being honest about those things as well? Most definitely. I think all employers, they want to see there is a personal reason. Firstly, they want to know that you can do the job. Secondly, that you'll fit in, and when I say fit in, that there's alignment with their values and their culture. Thirdly, that you actually want the job. Yeah. That you're not just applying for the sake of it, that there's a real reason or a personal reason why you've made this decision and why it's the right time for you to go back to work, for example.
So what are some of the differences about the recruitment process these days? Has there been a lot of changes?
Look, recruitment has changed a lot over the last decade. I think there's a lot more use of technology in the recruitment process. One of the most obvious things is the use of, it's called applicant tracking systems. It's basically technology that reads people's resumes and cover letters. So your resume now has to be written and keyword optimized for a computer rather than just a person. So it's the same as SEO for a website. You have to have your resume really tailored to that position, using the right keywords, getting across the right skills and expertise. You can't just send a resume for, and it can't be all things to all people. It has to be tailored a lot more than it used to be.
Wow. So that's one of the mistakes you think that they commonly make, that you're not up to date with all that technology. What other sort of mistakes do you think freelancers might make?
With those applicant tracking systems, you have to be careful even about the template you use for your resume. Even though a more creative person often might use a template that's, heavily designed with lots of color and photos and embedded graphics, those systems often can't read that type of resume. So they have to be really careful that you're not using an overly designed template, which means that it won't pick up the right keywords, for example. I think that's one thing. Sometimes simple one-column format, no graphics and sidebars is a better option, but you can always link out, for example, to a website or your portfolio, which shows the creative side of what you do.
Yeah. I think you and I talked recently for a career story I was writing, and we touched on how job seekers have a bit more leverage these days in lots of industries. Is that true? And if so, what are some of the ways that you can ask for what you want?
So at the moment, it is a tight market across many industries. So if a freelancer is thinking about returning to the workforce, it's definitely a good time to be exploring options. I think one of the positives that's come out of COVID also is obviously there's much more flexibility around working arrangements. Most people are still working from home, if not, or a hybrid model. And so for freelancers who are used to working at home and working for themselves, that's going to be a lot more desirable than those sort of jobs were in the past. So because the market is tight, it's definitely a good time to be perhaps putting your hat in the ring for jobs that you might not tick all the boxes in terms of all the criteria. I'm seeing a lot of clients that are still getting interviews and job offers, even if they don't tick everything on that list.
Because the job posters wouldn't be getting as many responses, I suppose.
Correct. So the quantity of candidates isn't as high as usual in most situations and across most industries. So they can't afford to be as fussy as they may have liked to have been in the past. Particularly women tend to go, okay, I can only do 4 out of those 6 things, so I'm not going to apply. So I would say, still apply, try and make a follow-up call and actually speak to the recruiter. They may well say, look, that's in the ad, but we're happy to train you on that part.
So the big question is, when do you talk money? I mean, for freelancers, we're trained, or the way we work is that we talk money right at the beginning, because that's what you do when you're pitching your services. But I don't know that that's a really good thing in interviews, because I understand that's sort of almost the last question. Is that right?
It depends. So some jobs you'll see on Seek are advertised with a salary, so that makes it a lot easier. Many are not. Often there will be a screening interview. So, for example, you apply for a job, you get a phone call from the internal recruiter, and that's often, they're interested in what your preferences are. And so often in that call, they might ask you, do you have a salary range or a certain salary that you're looking at? And that could be asked in the actual application process as well. So in that case, I guess it's probably easier and better to not waste everyone's time by having a bit of an idea of what your desired range would be. There's no point going through an extensive recruitment process and finding that the job's 20 grand and less than what you would be willing to take.
And what if it's a job that you really want, but the salary is just not quite right? Do you have any scripts that you could use to sort of negotiate a higher salary?
I don't necessarily have scripts because every situation is different.
Yeah.
The first thing I would say to freelancers who are looking to get back into the market is to do your market research. So that might be talking to people working full-time in the jobs that they're aspiring to, speaking with recruiters who recruit for comms or writing roles. You need to go into those interviews with an idea of what your market rate is, so that you've got something to work with. And then you can say, look, from my research, I understand the range is from 80 to 100. What you've offered is a little bit lower than that. Is there some room for negotiation?
Yep. Amazing.
Yeah, makes sense. So how do you, as a career coach, how do you help freelancers get back into a permanent job, and how do you help them change that freelance mindset?
That's a good question. So I guess to answer the first part of your question, when you are looking for work, you need the clarity around the type of role that you actually want to do and what you're best suited to. What's going to use your strengths, what's going to energize you, what sort of work environment you're best suited to. So if freelancers don't know that, or don't really know exactly what they want to do, a career coaching session is where you can flesh some of that out and hopefully get a bit more clarity on what your target roles are. Once we know what the target roles are, then we support clients with cover letters, resumes, LinkedIn profile writing, and job search strategy, and also preparing for interviews. A lot of freelancers, small business people, may not have had an interview for 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
And these days, particularly if it's a larger organization or even a medium-sized organization, the interviews are what we call behavioral interviews. And so they'll ask for really specific examples. Tell us about a time you've worked with a difficult stakeholder. Give us an example of where you have had to manage your time during a stressful period. So we need to anticipate what those key competencies are and develop really specific examples that you pretty much go away and practice and rehearse, so that you're not put on the spot in the interview.
I remember you saying that when I interviewed you for this career story, how important it is to prepare specific examples that show how you might have worked with a client and achieved a certain outcome, or how you dealt with a difficult situation. That made so much sense to me, because it wouldn't be naturally something we'd think of doing, but having that in an interview means you can be put on the spot and you'll be okay.
Well, in my experience, this might be a generalization, but a lot of writers are introverts.
Yeah.
And introverts often don't like being put on the spot. They like to be prepared, have really anticipated what they're going to be asked. So the interview coaching, look, we obviously work with extroverts as well, but it's making sure that you have prepared and really thought through what are the challenges going to be in this role, what are the key priorities, and where have I dealt with similar situations in the past. And by providing evidence-based responses, like they're really just stories, you're giving the panel or the interviewer reassurance. Yeah, she's dealt with these problems before, and more importantly, when she does deal with them, she does it in the way that we do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I guess one question I'd really like to ask, I mean, it's been a while since I've gone for a full-time job because I love freelancing, but last time there were a lot of hoops that I had to jump through. And we see that sometimes in the Rachel's List Gold group, that you're getting people that have, 3 or 4 interviews. You might have writing tests, you might have psychometric tests. Last time I went for a senior role, I had to do a 40-day program of what I do and budgets and staffing and things like that. Should you do that? And is that common? When do you push back?
Look, that's a good question. Sometimes what they're asking for is absolutely outrageous, particularly when people were working in an office full-time. Yes. And had to escape in their lunch hour to get to interviews. At least now people have a lot more flexibility to interview and do all of those tests and jump through those hoops working from home. Sometimes that's just the process. It's their way of assessing that you have the right personality, the writing skills, the right competencies to do the job. If that's too structured for you, if it just doesn't feel right, then perhaps it's not the right organisation for you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have to remember also as a candidate that the interview process is also about us assessing them. It's not just a one-way street. So if all of those, hoops that you've got to jump, you're not comfortable with that, then I think you really need to think, is this the right place for me?
I mean, I want to jump in because there's so much fluidity amongst the people who listen to the Content Bite, and a lot of them might be job posters, I'm thinking. So, we get so many ads which want the unicorn, they shoehorn three different job specs into the one role, and we've had some unbelievable ads, try to go through, but they're not going to get those responses. So would you have any advice for job posters on actually getting a better response from their ads?
Yeah, look, I definitely think it helps when a candidate is reviewing an ad to see the difference between what is essential and what is desirable. So I think for the job poster or the person who's writing the ad, you really need to work closely with the hiring manager to see if there is any flexibility. Are there some things that they're asking for that could be easily trained? So for an example of that, often there's certain software systems that they're asking for in the ad. In most cases, that could probably be trained on the job. It's probably not essential. It's probably more about finding the right person and the right fit for the organization and someone who is keen to learn.
Yep.
You will often see jobs also that when people actually go and interview, the job is actually nothing like what's written in the ad.
Yep.
Yes.
Perhaps when they've used a job ad that's been recruited for that role a few years before and it hasn't been changed, but in fact, what is required is quite different. So that can be very frustrating for candidates when they're applying for a job, and then when they get to the interview, it's actually completely different to what they're expecting.
Yeah, that's so true. I know recruiters as well have a pretty bad name out there, but when you and I talked on that Career Stories, you mentioned how valuable they can actually be, some recruiters, and how you have to think in the sense of creating relationships with them and talking to them to save you time, and also even asking them questions and stuff to help you get to the next stage, and they're then anticipating your application coming through. Is that right? Can they be a useful tool?
They can definitely. Look, recruiters do get a bad rap, and as an ex-recruiter, I have a lot of empathy for recruiters because they are very busy people. They're either interviewing people all day or following up. They're talking on the phone or in an interview pretty much all day. So it's completely understandable that they're not able to return every call. I think people also have to understand how recruiters get paid. They are briefed on a job from a client. Their focus is filling that job. They might be running 5 jobs, 10, some would be looking after maybe 20 or more. Their focus, if they want to get paid for the month, is filling those jobs. So as a candidate, even if you are a quality candidate, if they can't see how they can, in the near future, where there might be an opportunity for you, then they're probably happy to have a chat, but they're not going to keep in touch with you regularly. However, you can be respectful of their time and say to them, look, how often would you prefer I keep in contact? How do you like to work? Some recruiters might say, look, I'm only going to contact you if I think I have an opportunity for you, but I'm not going to forget you, but you're welcome to touch base once a month or once every 3 months. So I think it's about understanding how the recruiter prefers to work, rather than having a meeting with them and expecting them to be contacting you every week to check in on you.
Now, we've talked about freelancer CVs a lot on the podcast, and you mentioned a bit about the sort of systems out there, the technology. One of the things you just touched on, which I think is interesting, I think a lot of freelancers aren't great on, is LinkedIn. Is that a really important part of your CV sort of strategy, I guess?
I think it's almost a must-have in these days. The first thing that a recruiter will do is look you up on LinkedIn. If they get your resume, the first thing before they call you is probably have a look at your LinkedIn profile. So your LinkedIn profile needs to be consistent with your resume. It needs to be professional. It needs to be easy for them to see what you can offer and what you've done in the past and what your skills are. It's also a great opportunity to showcase your work and your creativity as well. You can link out to websites, you can link to your portfolio. So you can make your LinkedIn page actually look really attractive with a great photo, a great banner, shot at the top. So it's a really good opportunity for you to stand out a little bit more rather than not having a profile at all.
Amazing.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we have a free jobs tracker at Rachel's List, like an Excel spreadsheet, which a lot of people download because they can monitor all the jobs that they're applying for, not just at Rachel's List. Is that something that you recommend, tracking and monitoring your progress and treating it kind of like having a system?
Most definitely. That way you can see I've applied for 50 jobs. I've only got 2 interviews. Well, that would suggest to me that there's something wrong with the cover letter or the resume, or you're applying for the wrong jobs.
Yep.
When I say something wrong with your resume, it's if you feel that you have the skills to do that job, then there's something that's not getting across to the recruiter. You know, they're not seeing that. If, on the other hand, you're getting lots of interviews, but they're not converting to job offers, I'd say, well, let's do an interview coaching session to understand where you might be going wrong in the interviews. So by tracking applications versus first interview versus second interview versus offer, you can see where perhaps things are breaking down in the recruitment process for you.
That's great advice. So at that point, you would go and get some advice and perhaps get a coaching session.
Well, I'd hope so. And I think we've got to remember that with resumes, they really have to be, particularly, well, the cover letter more so has to be tailored to the job, but the resume might still need to be tweaked a little bit. You can't just use the same resume if you're applying for different types of jobs.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Rach just mentioned some tools, and we often just ask all our guests their favourite tools, like we like a bit of IT. Are there some digital tools or services that you'd be lost without?
Oh, look, I was laughed when I was thinking about this question. I'm definitely not a guru when it comes to IT. I have a CRM that I use called 17 Hats, and that has changed my life because every single client, I can put their details in there. I can attach their resume. All my emails are linked to their file, and I can also have all my quotes and my templates in there. And that has changed my life.
I haven't heard of 17 Hats.
I haven't either.
That's a great one. No.
We had a guest on the other day who liked Dubsado, but I don't know if that's might be a similar thing to 17 Hats. We'll have to check it out.
Yeah, so look, I love that. I've also got an app on my phone called Todoist.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I use that for my sort of daily to-do list, which is great just when you're in the car waiting for kids or something like that, rather than always needing your notepad with you. So look, they're probably the 2 that I'm using, and I use Planoly to schedule social media posts, and Canva I absolutely love as well. So they're my favourite ones.
Yeah, great.
Wow, so it's great insights. Are there other things that we could ask you that you think are mistakes that freelancers make?
Look, I don't think necessarily they're mistakes, other than what I've already mentioned before, making sure the resume is tailored. Making sure that they've also done their research on whether that role is really what they want to do. I think sometimes the grass is always greener, and we think that a role is going to suit us, but that's where I guess LinkedIn is extremely helpful, that you could actually reach out to people doing that work or in that company that you're considering and do a bit of due diligence and see, well, what is it like to work there? Is that, if they say they're flexible in the ad and the interview, well, what are some examples of that? And look, LinkedIn is a great tool for job search, for personal branding, but more importantly for research, particularly if you're looking to get back into a full-time role, using it to find people who work for that company that you already know. But the power of LinkedIn is in those second connections. You can find a mutual connection and get an introduction to someone through another friend or someone else in your network.
I think as well, something we haven't really talked about except just briefly is perhaps having a bank of cover letters, because I know at Rachel's List we often see the same cover letter come through, like exactly the same cover letter come through for every application that they might apply for. And I always think, oh man, just, mix it up a little bit, put some into it. I'm also conscious that people get to the point where they're jaded and they don't get a response, and they, that pisses them off. So they do the bare minimum. But do you think the solution might be to have a bank of really great cover letters that you've worked on, before, that you can quickly modify?
You're probably not going to like this answer, but I think cover letters really need to be tailored to every job. So, for example, if you're writing for a content writer job, there's a certain skill set that's usually required for those jobs. So, I think you would have a paragraph showing your interest in the role and why you want to work particularly for that company. So that has to be tailored and written for every job. Mm-hmm. And then you might have, this is what I can offer. And often we suggest breaking up your cover letter with some bullet points, with some bold headings, which as writers, you might not like the sound of that, but you've got to make it easy for the recruiter to match you to the job. Mm-hmm. Recruiters generally, they say, look at your resume for about 6 seconds. So it's got to be really easy for them to pick up keywords. They've sort of got a checklist in their mind of what they're looking for. So make it easy in the cover letter for them to match you to that job.
So that's looking at the role, picking the keywords out, putting them in your resume and putting them in the cover letter.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. As you said, Leah, it's a bit like SEO, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like SEO, or sort of doing that on your CV as you would in any blog post.
Yeah, so it's making sure, like going through, I would say, get a highlighter out and add, really highlight the things in the ad, the key experience, the IT skills, certain things or expertise they're looking for, and make sure that's in the cover letter front and center, but also on the front page of your resume.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Well, Leah, thanks so much for talking to us today. Tell us where people can find you, connect with you, etc.
I love LinkedIn. That's one of my biggest tools. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. If you're looking for more information about our services, the website is www.relaunchme.com.au. Mm-hmm. So we have a full list of our services and prices on there as well.
Oh, fantastic. We'll pop all that into the show notes as well. I think this episode would be really helpful for a lot of people out there who might be thinking of a job change in 2023 or leaving freelancing.
Yes, I think so too. I think beginning of the year and the end of the year are critical times where people reassess what they're doing, and I think that it will be really popular. So thanks so much, and thanks to everyone who's listening and sharing it on social media, because we love that. And don't forget to leave a rating or review on the platform where you find your podcasts.
Yes, thank you again, Leah, and also thanks to our sponsor Rounded, easy accounting and invoicing software built just for freelancers. And you can find out more at rounded.com.au. We'll see you next week, won't we?
Yes, for sure. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leah. Bye.
Thanks for having me.
See you later. Bye.